Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Okay, so Joel, we decided that we're going to, figuratively speaking, we're going to stand on our heads today.
Yes.
Because the original topic we were given was resentment, and we're going to flip that around. And the way to do that is to stand on your head. When you flip it around, you get appreciation and gratitude.
Yes.
Which is in our wheelhouse. We know that one real well.
We do. And this week in particular, there's an emphasis on being thankful. We have Thanksgiving.
Well, how about that?
I mean, isn't that amazing? Amazing tie-in. I mean, we should be paid more for this, to be honest.
We should. We should. Absolutely.
Or be paid at all. But
that would be a good start. Yeah.
So, but you know, the one of the things that I say every year when I'm on a Facebook anymore, but I remain on Instagram, and I always post that. Well, I am grateful that we have Thanksgiving, but you know, Thanksgiving is a redundant holiday for me. Every day is a day of gratitude every day, and the reason, and it isn't, you know, it isn't this superficial. I'm grateful, everything's perfect. It's not that at all. You and I understand that. There's a lot of people that get into this process, and you know, gratitude is, in my mind, the most powerful connective energy to the law of attraction. The law of attraction responds to gratitude. It's not the only way, but it is, to me, it's the most powerful connection. That the energy you put out in the law of attraction, the emotion you put out toward that is what you're attracting back. Gratitude for me has always been the signal of most power. I don't know if I think it is for most people, but it does that. So when I hear of, you know, we got a week of Thanksgiving, and I'm really glad that we do that, because it focuses on being grateful for what we have. The concept is good, but what would happen in a world where we didn't even need a Thanksgiving holiday, where gratitude was the main mindset? It would be so amazing what that would do to the overall energy. But to be reminded once a year that you got to be grateful for this stuff, and somehow we equate it by eating about 8,000 calories and junk food. I haven't put all that together yet of why it makes sense, but the premise is good, because we do need to rely more on, you know, the energy of being thankful, being grateful, because it does attract what we're seeking. And when you're grateful for the life you have more of the stuff that you're grateful for. When you're, you know, angry or you think you're lacking, or you're not grateful for it, you always will lose that. And at least that's worked for my life. And these are factors that work for me. The gratitude rewires the brain. Gratitude rewires your perspective. I think it also, there's an energy exchange with people who are grateful. So I always, you know, I feel when I walk into a room, my job, I feel like, or my goal more than my job, is to influence the energy in the room. I want to influence the energy in the room to match my energy. And walking in with gratitude, walking in with just being fulfilled with life, that energy is you can see a room change pretty quickly when you do that. And I discuss this all the time with people. Just, you know, the 5 things I've written down for over 30 years. I write 5 things every morning without one day missing, and that includes the day my son died. That includes days I'm in jail. I wrote that down every day. It's not some ridiculous exercise in futility that I do. It's a grounding and a reminder to me that if I start every day with gratitude, and it's been very successful, all I can have is more things to be grateful for. I have some very bad days. This isn't like it erases those things from happening. But what gratitude allows me to do is quickly focus on what I am grateful for, instead of the stuff that I perceive is going wrong in the day.
Yeah, which makes sense. And it's also why a day of Thanksgiving is actually a good reminder, because even for people like you who are grateful every day, it's still good to be reminded. It's still good to have that thing that says, oh yeah, I am grateful. I do appreciate what's going on here. This is actually good stuff. In fact, when I finished the earlier, I do podcasts twice on Monday. When I finished the earlier one with my guests, we were chatting afterward. And one of the comments that I made during that little after show chat was kind of along these lines, about how important it is not only to be grateful, but also to be grateful even in the face of things that we have trouble feeling gratitude for. Like when we first started this topic, I mean, we talked about how we're standing on our head metaphorically. The original topic was resentment. It's an understandable topic. People deal with resentment every day. They feel resentful about things that are going on in their lives, and I would not even recommend what I'm about to say to people who are currently going through that, because it's so far outside of their range they couldn't even get there. But a goal that I set for myself and that I urge other people to set for themselves once they've been on the gratitude path for a while, once they've been on the growth path for a while, is to try to find ways to appreciate the things they used to feel resentment about, which is not easy to do. I mean, I am not going to sugarcoat it and say this is an easy thing to do. There is nothing easy about it. But what it does do is that it retrains your brain to look at things differently. You don't have to like the thing. It's not like you have to change your liking about something. But it is useful to find something about that thing, even if it's nothing more than, I'm glad I'm not that, I want to be this instead. That's useful. That's a valuable way of appreciating something. So I'm always looking for, how can I appreciate even the things that I don't like in life? And it really works for me.
I have one of the turning points in my life revolves around that concept, where many years ago I was in Las Vegas and I was homeless, and things were really bad. I can't describe how bad they were. I mean, being homeless in Las Vegas by definition seems pretty sad anyway. But I haven't eaten in days, and I really thought I was going to starve. I didn't know what I was going to do, and as a last resort, I ate out of a dumpster behind a McDonald's on the Las Vegas Strip, and it was disgusting. And I remember that was the absolute worst day of my life. And I remember it very clearly, and it later becomes super relevant in my life. But I remember saying, if there was a God, I hate you. Just kill me. Why? This is not anything that, I just consider that a trauma. I didn't discuss that with anybody. I never told that story. It just was something that I was, it was terrible. I eventually turned my life around, but it just was that remained as a big trauma to me, that I had done that, and it's something I never discussed. And it wasn't until years later that I had a circumstance when I was asked to be a foster care parent for a young man who had been horribly neglected, and he had a lot of issues. And the agency that I was doing volunteer work for asked me if I'd be his foster dad. And I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know what I'm doing. And I was convicted felon. Not many single male convicted felons get to adopt or foster care kids.
Yeah, sure.
And I guess their theory was, what the hell? I mean, you can't screw it up any worse than it is. So, but anyway, long story short, I decided to, take him in as a foster care child. And he acted out wildly crazy in the beginning. Then of course, I'm like, this doesn't even move the bar for me. And he started doing really well. And as he was doing really, really well during this process, his people were noticing. I mean, he couldn't read when he came to me, and he started reading on grade level. That was really thanks to a specific teacher that took time, but made massive movements. His behavior totally changed at school. He was compliant. And one day the caseworker comes out and goes, we just need to know what you're doing. This is one of the most drastic changes we see. This kid was a day away from going to the state hospital at 11 years old. You never get out of that. And so they were just fascinated with what I'm doing. I don't know. It's just, I don't let him push me away. And, we developed a pretty good bond, and he functions well with that. And they said he doesn't open up to anybody. And he didn't really open up to me other than just normal life stuff. And so they tasked me with trying to get him to open up. And he said, my job was to try to get him to talk to his therapist. And so as we were doing that, as we were going through the process, so one Saturday morning, he was sitting there eating his little peanut butter sandwich, which he had every Saturday morning. And I said, TJ, your caseworker wants me to try to get you to talk to your therapist about your past. And he's just shaking his head. He goes, no, I don't want to talk about that. And I go, but they think it's really important that you get that out. And you and I get along real well. And, you won't listen to anybody else. So would you consider doing that? And I've never seen somebody cry this way. He started crying so hard. The only time, one of the few times I ever saw him cry in his entire life. But his tears were like they were popping from his face. They weren't going down. They came out. And I was like, damn, that's intense crying. And he was a skinny little kid at the time. And he grabbed his fist and he hit the table. Excuse my language, but it's really important. He stood up and he hit the table and he goes, how the fuck will you know what it's like to eat out of a goddamn trash can?
Yeah.
And I said, well, now that you mention that, and then I told him my story. And I said, now the difference between you and me is if you ate out of the trash can and you were forced to do that, then that was somebody else's fault. You're just a child. Now, mine was my fault, but nonetheless, if you're asking me the feeling, that was a turning point for TJ. I eventually ended up adopting him, and many of you know the story as that goes from there. It was a really big time, but the reason I'm telling the story now is to go back to, it was the moment that it happened that I realized that horrible event that I thought was this big traumatic thing that I could never discuss with anybody really became a transformative event. I reframed my perspective of that trauma into a necessary event and became grateful for the event. And that is exactly what you're talking about in a very powerful form. And it quit being a trauma and became, I see it differently. I don't view that as a traumatic day anymore. I view that as a necessary part of my growth. And eventually led me to adopting TJ and us having a really good life. And
which
that
was
something that wouldn't have happened. I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened to some degree, but it was that story. What are the odds of me eating out of a dumpster years later, having a foster kid in my house that had the same thing going? What are those odds?
I couldn't even begin to calculate that, but let's just say they're very, very long.
Yeah. So I love it when I take, we can often, just like you're saying, when you can become grateful for everything. And I mean this is the sad part of the story is TJ passed away in a car wreck in 2014. But the idea, other than that event, there is all of it I'm grateful for. The good, the bad, the ugly, going to jail, losing everything, building my life back. I'm grateful for every event except the one where he passes away. I'll never accept that. But beyond that, I reframed my life. I had a lot go on in my life, had a lot of things happen. But I just view them as all necessary. They made me the man I am today. I wouldn't survive going through it again, but I wouldn't change a thing other than his death. That was the only thing I would change.
I remember when you first told me that, not this TJ story, but your own story about, the arrest and all that other stuff. And I remember at the end of that particular episode, this is one of the earliest episodes you and I did together here on the show. You explained to me how, even though it was something you never wanted to go through again, you were 100% grateful for it, and it was the best thing that ever happened to you in your life. And I remember vividly thinking to myself, I like this guy, but he's absolutely insane.
Well, I mean, your instinct was true, but I sincerely believe and am grateful because I have an incredible life now. I love my life and what I do for a living, how I get to help people. None of those things are possible without every single event happening. And they led me to who I am. I feel honored to be allowed to live the life I live. It's almost, you and I have talked about this a few times over the years. Right. It's an unbelievable story when you hear it from, people don't believe it. You were in the middle of some of it.
Yeah.
TJ hadn't passed away at our first show at that point.
Yeah.
And so you got to see a lot of this unfold, and it's just worked out in an amazing way. And I just it does make people think I'm crazy sometimes. I say I was born into chaos. I was born into mental illness. I was born into addiction, and I suffered from all of that. I overcame that. I have developed a life that, I can't imagine. I can't imagine having a better life than I have.
And actually, your example, your story, is what convinced me to pay attention to that idea, to that notion that you could actually appreciate something horrible that happened to you and to appreciate it as one of the best things that ever happened. Because, like I said, the first time I heard that, my mind boggled. Like, what the frig is this guy talking about? But what it has done since then is that it set me on a journey with my other interviews, because obviously I've interviewed hundreds, even thousands of people here on the show over the years. And in the process of doing all of those interviews, I find myself asking the same question over and over again. I asked it of the guest who was on the show earlier today. I said, she went through a severe trauma. And I asked her, well, that trauma, I know you would never want to go through it again, but would you consider that to be one of the best things that ever happened? And she didn't even hesitate. And you know what the amazing thing is, Joel? I've asked that. I don't know how many people I've asked that of. Certainly hundreds. I haven't had a single person say no.
Yeah.
I mean, not even hesitating. They all just jump right on the bandwagon and say, yes, absolutely. That was the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
It's kind of astonishing.
It forces change. It forces something. The person I was before all of this stuff happened was not the person I'd ever want to be. This forced me to change. It forced me to have to face things. It made me stronger. It made me, nobody went and did this but me. And I'm not saying that there weren't kind people along the way that offered help and guidance, but I can say that this was no bailout. This was me getting I went out and did this, and I feel I'm strong enough, and that's also knowing no matter what happens, I have come to believe that I can handle whatever life throws at me because I've handled whatever life has thrown at me. Yeah. And so I don't think that's going to stop. And so the premise that you can take these events and become resilient, there's we mentioned this last week on the show, the growth mindset as described by Carol Dweck from Stanford University. Right. Her book about the growth mindsets, resilience, and versus the victim mindset, and they're really, really relevant when you take things. The strongest people I know will look me in the face and say, I overcame it. I did it. I have no excuses. And then I'm often dealing with people who, my parents do these things. My parents gave me the wrong medication. My parents did this wrong. And when I say you're a 30-year-old man, a 40-year-old man, and you're talking about your mom, and what the hell, it's just, but yet there's people that will never accept responsibility and then fix their life because that victim mindset gets them stuck. And the grateful mindset, the positive growth mindset learns to take what if. And when I say what if, this is just more of a metaphorical question, because I really believe it's true. But what if everything that happened to you is intended to make you stronger, smarter, faster, better? What if that's the point of life, which I think it is the point of life?
And I get that. Now, I don't think I would have gotten that some 12, 13 years ago when you first explained the concept to me, but I get that one now. Yeah. I think it is true. It's honestly, it still gives me a hard time. I still struggle with it at times. But my goodness, the evidence I've been getting over all these years is so overwhelming. After a while, you kind of say, okay, all right, I get it. You can stop sending the evidence. I get it.
Well, but being able to, when I have this ability now, because if something happens, and as I said, I don't have a perfect life, things happen, and I deal with stressors, I deal with disappointment, frustration, breakups, I deal with all that stuff. But I always have the ability to stop myself in the moment and realize, wait a minute, okay, this is part of my process. I'm not comfortable right now, but know what I've been through. Where does this, like the other day, I this was so stupid. I had a flat tire.
Oh.
So this is embarrassing to even tell the whole story. So as I was sitting there waiting for the Lexus repair dude to show up and change my tire, which is embarrassing that I had a Lexus repair dude come to change my tire. Yeah. And by the way, the tire's like $400 tire, so that's annoying, but none of that matters. That's not part of the story. So, so I'm sitting there and I'm like waiting for the guy. I had to wait like 35 minutes. Again, not that long. And I can remember just getting frustrated. the moment I identified the frustration and the like, where is he? What is he doing? I should be a priority, and I had that entitlement and whatever. And I said, wait a minute, stop. Today I'm not eating out of a trash can. Today I'm not in prison. Today I'm not getting my head beaten 2x4. Today my son hasn't died, and I'm being inconvenienced by minutes for a guy to come change my tire.
Yeah,
it's absurd that I even can get, and I can quickly refrain from that and switch to a gratitude that I'm grateful to have the ability to have a vehicle that comes with a roadside service that does. I switched that up. Was very thankful when the guy got there, gave him a nice little tip on top of whatever they normally give him, and went about my way. And it just was this. It went from what I thought was a major inconvenience to just a minor moment that it didn't even affect my day. It didn't matter.
What you're describing is the skill that we're really driving at here when we talk about the contrast between resentment and anger on the one hand and appreciation and gratitude on the other hand. Because if you can develop the skill of switching from one to the other, from the negative to the positive, from the resentment, anger, fear, rage side over to the gratitude, appreciation, this is a good thing happening in my life side. It's not easy to do, but once you learn that skill, what I found is that nothing really gets me down much anymore, which is kind of odd because that was not my usual experience. My usual experience was exactly the opposite. Like regularly, routinely, things would not only get me down, I'd start getting depressed about it. I'd start planning things. You know how I was a consummate planner. I could plan anything to death. Well, I would do that. Not take any steps. I just planned because I was good at the planning stage. And I would just plan myself into a depressed state every single time.
Yes.
But once I learned that, first of all, you actually can make that kind of a shift. And then second, learned how to make that shift. Oh my goodness. It's like night and day. It's an entirely different daily life experience. So when we're talking earlier about how Thanksgiving is coming up this week here in the US, and we shouldn't have to be reminded of it. Well, actually, I appreciate the reminder because it's one more opportunity to say, oh yeah, look how much progress you made in the last 13 years. Well done.
Absolutely. And I've had a front row seat to that 13
You
years.
certainly did, yes.
and see the difference and see the growth and see the amazing life you develop by changing your mindset alone and doing these things we're talking about. And that's the, being grateful, the Thanksgiving, the being grateful is an opportunity to share that. And when you operate, what I mentioned earlier about the rewiring of the brain, when the brain accept, I believe, and I can speak for me and probably the majority of people I work with, that I do have a skewed population. So, but
that's just
always call that the norm. Yeah. But the idea that I grew up with the opposite, with the lack mindset, the lack of gratitude mindset, the what's missing mindset, the unfair mindset, and life kept delivering that to me. It kept delivering the worst case scenario because I believed that I had always the worst case scenario was up next. And I kept getting those worst case scenarios. And it wasn't until I was able to flip that and understand that it never was about me being unlucky or any of that other thing. It was simply about me moving forward and accepting what was, being grateful for what I have. And that became enough. And then once I started looking at it that way, then it just kept coming. I don't have any like apparently the stock market and Bitcoin's really down last week or whatever. I don't even watch it anymore. I don't care. It's going to be back up. It's not, why am I going to worry about that? And I don't put myself in the mindset of that. And there used to be, I'd follow that stuff and go, oh my God, I'm down 100 grand today or whatever. I'm not down anything. I'm not going to sell anything. It's fine. So the ability to just sort of go through life and it doesn't stop things from happening, as I keep alluding to. It just allows you to quickly shift, and the time in between things messing with it's just almost instantaneous now.
Well, I will say one thing. This is pure law of attraction I'm going to talk about here for a moment. But I will say that when you're able to make this shift on a regular basis, the number of bad things that happens to you shrinks dramatically. The number of good things that happens to you increases dramatically.
I believe that. And I obviously I believe it because I have living proof of that.
You have lots of living proof of
Yeah.
it.
But also at the same time, the ability, there's when I say something bad happens now, something bad happens is generally at this point a minor inconvenience. It's not even the stuff that is so bizarrely silly.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean they don't have that color eggshell for the painting of the bottom? I mean, how dare you? Whatever,
Yeah, that's definitely going to ruin your whole life there. No doubt about that.
Yeah. Well, I just, I think of these things now, and I realize, so not only does it not happen, as anything that I do perceive as horribly inconvenient or whatever, I'm like, it's not. It's just whatever it is. The air conditioner or heating system the other day did something weird. Oh my God. I had about 1/8 of a second of, oh my, I'm like, okay, stop that craziness. I didn't even allow myself to finish the sentence. I just called the guy and said, come fix this thing. Just, it doesn't matter. I didn't even allow the thought to go full circle. It instead of it even lasting a minute, I said, oh, don't do that. Just call the guy.
I had an experience with it just this past weekend. As you know, I have a project I'm working on, a programming project. And this past Saturday, all of a sudden, I woke up. I was up for an hour or so, a couple hours, and then all of a sudden, the internet went out. Like, well, wait a minute! I need the internet. The project, the way I do it, I have to have internet access. There's no other way to do what I'm particularly doing. Well, this sucks. I mean, this is going to ruin my whole day. This is going to. I mean, this is going to destroy everything I'm trying to do. And then I stopped myself. I said, wait a minute. This is just the internet out. This isn't a big deal. I mean, at the worst thing that happens, hey, I need to go do some shopping. I might as well just go do some shopping now. It turned into a positive.
Yeah.
Before I could even get my code on, the internet came back on.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I was making something out of nothing until I finally decided, this is the key, until I finally decided that it really wasn't anything.
Well, that is the key. Once you realize that you can immediately stop it from bothering you, and then then it's like, okay, and then you realize it quickly got fixed. It just didn't even, but yet that mindset, we're pulling these subconscious things from the past that wants to take everything to the worst possible conclusion. As I said, awfulizing, as I like to call it, where they, we those things are, just built in. And my mom spent the entire day when she was alive. This isn't derogatory toward my mom. It's just what she went through in life. She would chew on her lip and just mentally think of the things that were going wrong or what could go wrong.
Oh,
and she would sit there and just a ball of anxiety. And all she would do is cycle from one thing to the next to what could go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's
it was so sad to see. It was this just and it seemed protected of her growing up, how she grew up, and with an alcoholic father and a lot of stuff that had a lot of stress younger. And so I'm sure to her, and we talked about it briefly, but to her it felt necessary. If I don't consider every bad scenario, then everything's going to fall apart. That, in fact, the problem is it was the reverse kept happening to her. She was attracting every bad scenario.
So I think we've laid out the case pretty effectively for why it's a good idea to do this. But let's also kind of take it back to step one again in the scenario where we're dealing with something really severe. Because there are a lot of people in the world today who are dealing with very severe stuff. I mean, we could draw from the news if we were watching the news, but we don't watch the news, so we can't really draw from that. But the point is that there are people who are dealing with all kinds of things, anything from basics of not being able to pay the bills, not even having a job, perhaps. We're entering the winter months here in the Northern Hemisphere, so being able to pay the heating bill. I mean, there's a whole range of things that can come up that you just feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And then you hear this message about trying to find a way to flip your resentment around to gratitude, and you think, are you out of your freaking mind? That's where I think we need to address right now, because we both went through that. Can we find a way to verbalize how you get through that? How you take those miniature steps, those little small steps to turn things around?
Well, it begins, and I completely understand that feeling. So when you hear, first time I started hearing people say, well, you need to do these steps that I'm talking about, do these things, and and be like, what the hell are they talking about? I
Yeah.
can't pay my bill. I'm homeless. I got, so where does it begin? And the beginning process of, I don't have the solution of how it will get fixed.
Hmm.
I do have the framework to begin the process of how it gets fixed, and that you start trying to shift slowly. Look for what's right. I don't have heat right now. I mean, you're uncomfortable. That's dangerous, and you have that occupies your space. So it's really hard to simultaneously be grateful while you're cold and freezing, and you don't think you're going to be able to,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So it's really hard to occupy that, but learning to not, when you're looking at it from that fatalistic point of view, then there is no solution. You're just stuck. It's like, that's what it is. So we have to shift to, and again, these are my phrases. What is an actionable step? What
Yes.
becomes an actionable step? Number one, first thing I would do if that were a heating thing and somebody were talking to me, I would call your local gas company, electric company, explain the situation. They often have programs, that help with that. I would start there. I would start with social services for people, that have that. If you're elderly or have kids, there's almost always a way to make that happen. I would look for relatives in a worst case scenario I could stay with. I look for shelters that had heat. I would step one, let's fix the immediate problem.
And by the way, I want to piggyback on that for a moment, because we are actually dealing with a situation now. Electricity prices are up significantly here in the U.S. over the last few months, and there are people who are dealing with exactly this issue right now. What you just said, particularly about reaching out to the power company, is vitally important, because literally the power companies want you to call. We have this mindset that we develop that says, well, I can't call them. I'd be revealing that I can't pay the bill, and I just get in trouble with them. It's exactly the opposite. They want to be able to help you set up a payment plan that you can afford, that will help you get through. They literally have staffs set up to do exactly that.
I last week, and we've had a few cold days, but we're going between cold and mild.
Mm-hmm.
But yet the other day, so because of this silly snap shutdown a few weeks ago or whatever,
Right.
there's this, I got wind of a family that their snap was cut off, and they didn't have electricity, or they didn't have gas for the furnace, and they had 2 or 3 small kids. So they didn't even have a phone. So I got the address, and I stopped by, and I talked to them, and the lady, and understandably so, but she was stuck in, we have nothing, we don't have that. I said, well, first of all, we're going to get some groceries today. Stop with that part. So let's get the groceries fed. I'll go get whatever you need, but we need to get actionable steps. And so I called the local electric company, explained who I was. They were amazing.
Yeah.
The electric company does the gas too. So that's why I don't get confused. Right. They said, they're on the way. They will turn it on. We have several programs. I said, if I need, I'll pay something. If they go, no, you don't need to do that. We have multiple programs. We can do this. We just need to be kept up to date. We didn't know there was a problem. Right. So informing there was a problem, said it will not be turned off this winter, no matter what. So we'll work that out.
Which is a huge relief, by the way, if you're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yes. So one 20-minute phone call got that solved. And giving Dominion Energy huge credit for that. They were out there and within 30 minutes. It was amazing. So we fixed that. So I basically didn't have the courage to go buy her groceries for her, but I went and got her a $500 gift card for the grocery store. So go get what you need to get. And, so we took care of that. And by the way, I didn't even mean to say the number. I'm not saying that in an arrogant way. I just made sure they had plenty of money to get enough groceries.
I get you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we we solved the two biggest problems. And then I was able to talk to her about, okay, so now that these are your biggest concerns. So now let's shift to how we get out of this. What do we do forward? And we start brainstorming ideas. We start, looking at, what happened to your job? Well, I can't have a job because I have these kids that I have to stay here and watch. That I understand that. So here's work for home companies. Here we started processing.
Mm-hmm.
Within less than 4 days from the first time I saw her, she had an online job that paid a pretty good wage.
Really?
One of the, I guess it's okay to say it, Tesla was having a shareholder meeting, and one of those companies had a shareholder, and her job was to call the shareholders and ask them to vote a certain way in the shareholder. That was all she had to do all day was do that. And then when that's done, there's another company and there's another company. So we have about 3 months worth of work that pays $17 an hour. She can work from home. So we solved that. But then we started, I got bigger. I said, what other things are we going to be able to do? So we started being solution oriented. One of our local, what do you call it? X-ray technician. There's a training for X-ray technicians that she can get a full scholarship through. There's daycare while she's in school that's available. These resources were revealed to her, and all of that happened within a week.
That's incredibly wonderful, and it's also available. It's
available,
because you can hear a story like that, you could think, well, she just got lucky. That's not going to happen to me. It's very easy to come to that conclusion.
Well, I'm also very confident on the phone, and I'm not saying that it would be easy for somebody to make those calls, but if you make them, I found everybody. There was nobody that even gave me a roadblock. There was nobody that even said, that it was just yes, we'll take care of it, we'll do it. There's programs, so I look at it. So when we're talking to people and situations, and I'm not saying there's not helpless situations, but most situations require, in my mind, start with an actionable step. Instead of I can do nothing, what is an actionable step?
And when you know that there is at least the potential for an actionable step, even if you don't know what it is, that alone gives a little shift. Not a big one, but it does give a little shift. It opens up a possibility that didn't exist 5 minutes ago.
Yes. And also one of the cool things in this story that I would like to shout out to our local Walmart too. So her neighbor took her up to Walmart, and I'd called the manager and I said, "Can you help her out with a generic cell phone or something, just so she'll have something?" And he said, "Yeah, just tell her to come ask for me." They gave her a pretty nice Android phone and 6 months worth of service through Straight Talk from Walmart. So at no charge, they just gave that to her.
Wow.
And so my point is, a lot of things can happen when you ask, but actionable steps, and have the confidence to present yourself, to ask, to go forward, not be ashamed. Because as you said, a lot of these people feel like, oh no, that would be the wrong move. They don't need to know I'm struggling. No, don't worry about that. The system is in place for most areas that you can get some relief of some sort.
You touched on the key word there, shame.
Yes.
Because shame is at the root of why it is we come to this conclusion that we really can't do anything, that anything that we try to do is going to be hopeless and so forth. And that's literally what holds us back. And if you go through something where you have the support of somebody like you, who's, walking you through and helping you get there, it does help you to get past that shame aspect to a degree, but still you're experiencing it. You're still experiencing it while you're going through all of it. Yes. And this until you come through the other side and things actually have worked out, that you can let go of some of that shame. But that's a big deal. That shame is a really big deal. And you deal with this on a regular basis. I mean, you're a coach. You used to be a psychotherapist. Now you're a coach. So in both cases, you're dealing with shame-based issues. Talk about some of the ways that you help people deal with, the fact that they're feeling shameful.
Well, shame it's an internal event. It's shame is something you place on yourself. Shame is you're assuming what other people are thinking, so you're shameful
Mhm.
of that.
Yeah.
I did this, so I'm bad. I'm a bad person for this or whatever. And it starts as it with everything. It starts with your perspective, the reframing, the looking, and yes, I've made some mistakes. I was shame filled for a long time for all the stuff
Mhm.
I had done,
Sure.
and I didn't want anybody to find out. One of the most horrifying moments in my life, and I guess probably when the internet came out, when was that? 95, that popular internet where I could
Mm.
get to it on AOL. When I found out that my booking photo of when I was arrested was online,
No.
Hillsborough County Sheriff's, I was horrified that people could see that. It was,
Mhm.
I did. I mean, everybody knew I was arrested, but in my mind, oh my God, everybody's running and looking at my booking photo, and it's not my best look, by the way.
It
But
never is.
yeah, yeah. And so it was one of those things that and then years later, I used the booking photo as the back cover of my book.
Yeah.
So, but I went from shame filled, and not that I'm proud that it was part of my story. I adjusted the perspective. And so the shame of it went away. That was just part of my process. It was part of my addiction. I'm not pleased that the chain of events that led me to be arrested and charged with theft. I'm not pleased with that, a
Right.
bad gambling addiction. But I'm also aware of what I've done in response. The shame
Mm.
is no longer there. I think that a lot of that becomes, it's reframing, hope of a better future, hope that there's something forward is a way but shame is a blocker. Shame keeps you from, like, people think that, oh, I messed up or I've done this and people are going to judge me. Nope, nobody really cares. I mean, I'm not trying to be minimal. Life is going on for everybody. When I've messed up, I'm sure people are talking about, oh yeah, here Joel got arrested. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But it wasn't their sole topic for 6 months. I mean, it
Right.
was mentioned and moved on. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. And so when I'm dealing with people who are dealing with shame, I try to help them reframe it into a perspective that is based on, yeah, you have messed up, but we are working towards something. We're working toward fixing it, moving forward, and your perspective eventually, believe it or not, when you start taking action that matters, shame also seems to disappear. Or starts to drastically reduce. So when you're sitting there just not doing anything, and I'm a bad person, I'm ashamed of who I am, and you're stuck in that vortex, then shame just builds up. But when you start any action forward, I know I'm saying action a lot tonight, but action is a key fundamental thing for these things. Then you can start. So one of the things I said to a guy the other day, he's like, look, I am just such a I did these terrible things. I stole from my family. I cheated on my wife. I sold drugs. I did. He went through the list. He said, I'm just a bad person. And I said, so tell me what you did today in your recovery. And he said, well, I got up, I worked out, I went to a meeting, I went to see my therapist, I applied for 5 jobs, and he went through the day. And so very good day for him. I said, so everything you just described, what else could you have done for your recovery today? And he kept going, well, maybe I could. I said, you could have done nothing more for your recovery than you did today. Nothing. You did maximum effort in your recovery. So other than maximum effort, what could you have done today? Nothing. You won today.
Mm.
And I start reframing that over and over and over.
Mhm.
And, if you get up every day, you do maximum effort, and well, I don't even know what that means, but give your best effort within that day, and
Right.
you repeat that, you overcome these things, and shame disappears.
And it may not disappear right away. It probably won't.
Never disappears right away.
Right.
But the more and more, further you get from it, and you're taking action, my shame has completely has not
Mhm.
been in my orbit for years.
Which is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. It's also a beautiful thing to recognize the importance of that action step, which you do. I know that's a huge thing for you, is to emphasize the action step. But you also do something else that I want to make sure I give credit for, because not only do you emphasize the action step. You emphasize the action step in the context of a mindset shift.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of people who don't do that. They promote the action step, but without a mindset shift. They don't pay any attention to the mindset.
And there's two ways to look at that as well. So I'm on the record loudly, like everything I do loudly.
One of the things I love about you.
But I have, and I always say it's probably possible, but I have never sat on my couch and manifested anything. Nobody came knocking on the door and say, "Here's $1 million." No, that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
I have taken action combined with the mindset of, positivity of in, that direction. Those two things for me are equal. They are important. Action, and in fact, Abraham Hicks in, I think it's Law of Attraction, she says, action with the right mindset is actually the most powerful combination. That's a little contradictory to what she says later on, but it really is this actionable step that is accompanied with the right mindset. It's those two things that work for me. That's those two things that work for everybody. So just action without the right mindset, you're going to keep getting the same results. Just the right mindset with no action for me has never been successful, but I've had unlimited success when I combine both.
And especially what you just mentioned about action without mindset. That was my story.
Yes.
When the business got blown up by the 2008 financial crisis, and my ex-wife's business also got blown up at the same time, we lost our entire income. From that point onward, I was taking all kinds of action steps every single day. I was literally putting in 12, 14-hour days trying to turn things around without success.
Right.
Because I did not understand the importance of the mindset.
Right.
That more than anything else showed me just how important that mindset piece is.
In fact, I would challenge, and again, if I remember correctly, so I asked a question. So when you were taking all that action, I think your mindset was, "Oh my God, we're desperate. We're
precisely."
So it was like you had a mindset that was the opposite of the mindset. It wasn't even a neutral mindset. It was
highly negative. Highly negative. Yeah. I was convinced that every step I was taking was going to lead to a bad result.
Yes.
And I was right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's scary to say that, but I was right. And we ended up going deeper and deeper into debt. And it was horrible. It was an absolutely horrible, horrible time. Not until I learned to change my mindset, which, by the way, I didn't even know you could do. I mean, I know that now, but at that time, I don't know if you remember, I thought it was not possible.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember it was actually my ex, Louise, who helped me to change that viewpoint. Because even back then, I was a guy who went out and took long walks. I still do today. But she'd say, next time you go out on your walk, just find some flowers and stop and look at them up close and just appreciate what the flowers have inside them. I said, well, I don't like flowers. She says, just do it anyway. Appreciate the color. Just appreciate something about those flowers. And I said, okay, all right. So went out and tried to do that and felt a little bit better. I said, okay, well, that was nice. Lasted about 5 seconds, And she encouraged me to do it the next day. And the next day happened to be a day where I was feeling miserable. I had it's not like I wasn't miserable every day. I was, but there were degrees of it. Some days were less miserable. Other days were more miserable. That was a really, really miserable day. It was really bad things that happened. And I went out and took the walk, and I remember her saying, do the flower thing again. So I did the flower thing again. And I was amazed because I noticed afterward, I didn't just feel a little bit better. I felt a lot better. And I said, what just happened? Because I literally believed that you can't shift your mindset. Not only that, I believed that any given situation had an emotion that was attached to it. And it was always that same emotion for that particular kind of situation. So if it was a bad thing, you'd have a negative association of an emotion. If it was a positive thing, there was a happy association with it. I believe that's the way things work. Here I was dealing with a negative situation, and I was experiencing a positive result. I was thinking, but that's not the way it works. Well, actually it is, but that's literally what I thought. At that time, I could not believe you could actually have control over your own response and leading to your own improvement just by choosing how you're going to think about something.
Absolutely.
That was mind-boggling.
Yeah. Well, to me, adjusting your mindset before you walk out the door every day is fundamental to success. Period.
Hmm.
It's and I don't leave the house with a bad mindset. I don't wake up every day with a great mindset. I'll be honest, but I
I have
don't
trouble
leave.
believing that actually, but okay, I'll take you at your word.
But I don't walk out the door until it's adjusted,
Oh,
until
I
it's
see. Okay.
reframed. Yeah, there's days I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm human, and especially when there's a perception that if I wake up and there's a perception that, okay, I the other day I had this. My most hated sessions are when a couple is coming to my office together.
Okay. Why is
It's
that? Why couples?
because it's inevitable. It's just the energy. I'm not a couples therapist. I try not to be a couples therapist.
Okay.
I am sometimes stuck seeing couples for various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And
But it's not your
this
choice.
case, I knew that we had really opposite situations. We had basically the wife was going to ask for a separation, and the husband didn't know it, and she was going to use my session to do that.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there, oh, of all the things I got to do, and because they're just so uncomfortable. And again, it is not my specialty. And
Mm-hmm.
but I got up going, oh, I'm dreading today. And I was like, stop that. This is ridiculous. My other 7 sessions are excellent. So I'm capable of managing this. I'll manage it. I worked on it, and it was the last session of the day. So it was there, and it would be at this point in the story that I would like to tell you that, oh, man, it worked out so much better. It didn't. It was horrible.
It was horrible.
It was terrible. However, it was really no other way for it to go. I quickly, within the session, said, she's expressing what she needs. He was devastated. And I was able to, do my appropriate role and then refer them back to a couples counselor for their, what they need to do to sort of mediate the separation.
Mm-hmm.
And after it was over, I'm like, well, that wasn't pretty, but I did my job. I did what I was supposed to do. It wasn't pretty. It didn't go it didn't go any worse than I thought it was going to go, but those things never go good. And nonetheless, it wasn't as bad as I thought because I just prepared for it to be. So even on those days, I had to leave and deal with that, and I had to work on my mindset. And even during the session, I remember just, there's really not much for me to do except sitting there very uncomfortably, knowing what's about to come out of her mouth,
right,
and knowing how he's going to respond. And it was, and there was nobody violent or even yelling. It was just this really somber moment with really long periods of silence.
Yeah.
Which is like,
it's miserable.
Yeah, miserable.
Yeah. It does lead to another question that I think we need to address, though, because things like this are going to happen in life.
Yes.
We are going to experience, even if you adopt a positive mindset, there are going to be times when things just don't work well.
Yep.
So the question that I want us to address is this: when things like that happen, how do we care for ourselves afterward?
Well, I'm going to give the worst response not worse, but I have a cheat code. So
okay.
I knew that was my last session, so I just took my gym bag and went straight to the gym.
Well, okay. Yeah.
I left any stress or anxiety on the floor of the gym, and it was in sweat, and I took care of that, and I felt great. So exercise, meditation, movement, walking, picking flowers, any kind of actionable step that gets you away and where you can observe other things, find things to be grateful for. When I do a lot of hiking now. That's a relatively new thing for me.
Really? I didn't know that. That's great.
And I live in a wonderful area for hiking. 2 hours away, I got a lot of mountains and waterfalls, but even within my immediate area, we have a few state parks. We have a lot of these odd little lakes that you can walk around. It's just a really cool thing. So I'm always out looking and really appreciating nature and seeing it in a different way than I've ever seen it before. And it's something that I used to love when I lived on the beach in Florida. I used to really appreciate the sunsets and all that,
Yeah.
but I didn't even realize how beautiful the area I live in now is. It's amazing.
Wow.
I like the area, but I didn't until I just started paying attention. I live in a really cool place, and
That's
it's got a
good.
lot of cool things. And
Yeah.
like I said, I'm 2 hours from the beach and 2 hours from the mountains.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's a nice location to be at.
Yeah,
Well, you're also pointing to something that's one of my favorite things. Getting out into nature is one of the best ways that I know of to care for oneself,
absolutely.
because the experience, you almost have to will yourself to stay in the negative mindset when you're out in nature like that in order for it to not have an effect. It is possible to do that. I have experience doing that, but the powerful pull of what the nature does to you, there's an energetic pull there. If you allow yourself to just fall into it even for a moment, it's amazing how much it will shift your mindset without you having to do anything. Literally, your biggest job in those situations is to do whatever you can to stop focusing on the negative thing that happened. To just focus on that nature, because there's so much there. There's so much for you to focus on.
Yeah. If anyone needs a really specific thing to do, and this would apply anywhere, but on Anna Maria Island, which is in Florida, which is my island, one of the most spectacular, everybody on the island, about 5 minutes before sunset, gather on the beach.
Yeah.
I mean, there are hundreds of people. And if you've ever seen that, and I know you've seen it on video and all that, but if you have ever seen in person just the amazing view of a sunset on a clear day over the Gulf of Mexico, and at the very end, there's an occasional time, I don't explain this, but there's a green flash occasionally. And the moment the sun disappears, it almost looks like a green flame. It's not always there, but when it's there, and if you sit through that process, you're changed. You're It really is, and it is. There's no place I would rather be than sitting there, and it could be, 100 degrees or have a cold front down there. It doesn't matter. Just going there and looking at that, it will recharge you, or going to the top of a mountain in fall, look at all the fall colors, and going into one of these beautiful snow resorts and seeing nothing but snow forever. I mean, you're Lake Tahoe, Nevada. I mean, or California is just stunning. So we have places all over the country, but even just finding some place to, like you found flowers, finding beauty in that's such an amazing thing, because your energy, the frequency of that overrides the frequency of the stress and the anxiety and all that. And as you said, I'm not saying it's impossible not to change, but it goes a long way if you'll allow it to change.
And you don't have to allow a whole lot. I mean, there's some things that you're trying to allow in life. It's really hard to do. That's an easy one.
No, just let that in.
That takes no energy.
Well, and when you look at it, and in fact, I have middle of next month, I have a trip to Florida to sit on my bench. I got some decisions to make. So I'm returning to my bench, where is my decision-making process, and I will definitely send some videos of the sunset I'm talking about. But I when I have a set of decisions make that are bigger, that I go there to do it. That's my place of decision making, because I feel so in touch with that. People say, well, I mean, you don't need, I don't have to. I mean, I can still make a decision, but I feel so much better when I make it there.
Yeah, understandable. That's a wonderful thing. I'm glad that you have that. And I think it's important for everybody to find a place like that.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be Anna Maria Island. It can be wherever you are in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Wherever you are, there's some place nearby that you can find, if you're willing to go look for it, that can have that kind of an impact on you.
Absolutely.
For me, there's just north of where I live, about a 20-minute trip, there is a little relatively unknown state park. Most people who live in Connecticut don't even know it exists.
Wow.
I mean, that's how small it is. It's literally just a series of very small waterfalls on a stream, but it is one of the most peaceful, beautiful places that I've ever known. So if I need to have that kind of a break, that's where I go. I don't care what time. Middle of the winter, I can go there.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any difference, because for me, the sound of water flowing down the waterfall has such a calming effect on me.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, the waves, one of my favorite things to do, is when there's a thunderstorm in Florida and my house has a view of the is on the Gulf of Mexico, so I see right out there.
Mhm.
Sitting at my big window in my chair, lights off, and just watching an evening thunderstorm come in
Oh my.
is one of the most phenomenal things you've ever seen. It's just, I'm in awe of every time. It's just watching the calm give way to the chaos and the lightning and the thunder, and it's almost like it's a symphony. And then all of a sudden it starts to calm down, and there's calmness again. It's amazing.
Well, for anyone who was listening, because they saw the title resentment, they wanted to try to deal with resentment. If you want a way to deal with resentment and you can't remember anything else we talked about, remember this part,
Yeah.
because this is a great way to just make a shift whenever you need to make a shift.
Well, and resentment. One of the things that happened with resentments are almost always from for really unmet expectations,
Right.
almost always. So you'll have expectation. It's usually the behavior of other people.
Yes.
But it could be anything. But when you expecting somebody to do something they don't, that's where the resentments generally come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things, and at first it sounds negative, I don't really have expectations of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, I'm not saying that's in a negative way as it could be interpreted. I have high expectations for me,
Mm-hmm.
but I try not to expect it because I'm not in control of that. And I have some people I can count on. I'm not suggesting I don't have all that, but generally my expectations are focused on what I need to be doing. And that way it keeps me from having resentments. And again, I'm human, things happen, I can have a resentment, but I generally try to, I don't like to have resentments in my brain. It's not a positive. I need to let that go. And if I have a resentment, my priority is getting rid of that resentment.
Which is a wonderful mindset to have. That's really what the whole essence of mindset shift is all about. So thank you for sharing all this with us. As usual, a wonderful conversation. We touched on some good points here, and look forward to doing it again next week. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.